Jesse Allen here, and joining us today, we have Andy Robinson with Brevant Seeds joining us here on Market Talk. He's a retail product agronomist. And Andy, great to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here, Jesse.
Andy, I appreciate the time. We got quite a bit of stuff to talk about here today. So let's jump right in. And I just love to know kind of an update on how crops are progressing in your area of the country and the territory that you cover, Andy.
Yeah, so Jesse, I cover kind of Southwest Indiana and then working down into Western Kentucky as well. And overall, I would say we've had a pretty decent growing year overall. Look at the state of Indiana, the USDA, they were saying about 194 is average for corn, which is pretty significantly. If you think about back to 2018, we're about 5 bushel better than that, and that was a really good crop. So this might be record setting yields we've got for a lot of the state. Southwest Indiana in particular, I would say overall, we've been sitting pretty good with rains during that month of July into August. It got pretty dry, but we've been getting some timely rains here pretty late. And then Kentucky overall, it just is really spotty depending on how those rains came through. And when you get over towards Bowling Green, they're down in rainfall and they were really dry and took some stress. You get over where I'm at, kind of near Princeton, Kentucky, and they're really wet over here. And so it's just really hit and miss depending on where you're at in Kentucky.
Well, Andy, you talk about some of those hit and miss areas, and we look as we're getting late in the season here. What are some late season stresses you're noticing in your area, and why are you maybe seeing some of those?
Yeah, so it's really depending on where you're at. Like you were saying, with the rainfall, some of the areas we had cool, wet early on that restricted root growth. But in a lot of areas where we're seeing that higher yield potential, that larger ear moving a lot of carbohydrates into that ear itself. I mean, you're seeing a lot of nitrogen stress because it's trying to move everything it can into that ear because that potential is so high. And so we're seeing some firing up going on. We're starting to see some late season stalk integrity where it's starting to be a little questionable. But it really just kind of depends on the year that you're having. In areas that were those misses where they didn't get the rain, you didn't have that really good root growth, you didn't have a lot of nutrients going in there. And so you're seeing that firing up from that as well.
Andy, is there anything farmers can do, and retailers for that matter, right now to kind of set themselves up to have a better harvest?
Yeah, definitely. So this is the time of year where we start talking to people to try to get them out, try and get them at least driving their trucks out and driving by fields. Especially, I would start in the fields that you know you have higher yield potential, that you didn't put fungicide on. Areas that you know that you planted that were maybe a little bit wet or you got some compaction to them where you might be seeing some stress. So any type of, it can be good stress or bad stress. So if you have really good yield potential, you can see that stress already starting in the plants. And I would say, to me, I would want to really kind of focus in on stalk integrity. Going back to that fungicide piece or moving carbohydrates from that stalk with that integrity and moving it into the ear, you're going to start to probably see some stalk issues this season. And so the best thing that farmers and retailers can do right now is to be out there driving through the crops and out there physically doing those, those pinch tests or the pushing the stalks over to see what that integrity really is. And if you start seeing 10 to 15%, you really need to move those particular fields up in your harvest window.
Definitely need to prioritize those fields for sure. Well, Andy, as well, I mean, we have the crop that's getting ready for harvest right now, but we're always thinking ahead too, and we can't forget about next growing season,
Yeah.
2022. What are some products or maybe some technologies that your customers are interested in as we get into 2022?
So in my area, we typically don't have a lot of below ground rootworm pressure, but in the areas that I was covering, I was up in kind of around crop 63 with Serious Solutions this week, working with some of the retailers, doing some training up there. And those folks that are working in those heavier rootworm pressures, our chrome trait coming through Corteva that has that above and below ground protection. We're still extremely excited and about the new products that we have coming forward with those. there's just really some outstanding yield. Not having any yield drag with this chrome trait has really opened up a lot of opportunities for those folks who need that rootworm protection. And then Enlist is going to continue to grow this year. We're hearing already that people are starting to kind of talk about what platform they're going to be planting for next year. And we saw big growth this year across the industry, and we're going to start to see that continue to move in that direction towards the Enlist E3.
Well, I know thinking about 2022 and beyond, if growers want to learn more, find their local retailer, find an agronomist like yourself,
So
they could do that probably pretty easy at Brevant.com, can't they?
they can, yeah. A couple things on the Brevant.com. You can go on there. You can, if you're a farmer and you're looking to where you can get Brevant, there's a section where you can actually see where your local retailer is. And also a nice plug, if you go in there, there's on the top of the website, there's a Be the First to Know. You can click that button and you can sign up, and you'll be able to get yield results as they're coming through the weeks as harvest starts to begin here.
Well, be the first to know. Click that link and find out more. Brevant.com. Andy, I appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us today here on Market Talk and catching us up on your area of the country there in Indiana, Kentucky. We appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, Jesse. Have a good one.